true paranormal story.
Nobody's ever gonna believe this. What the heck did I just see? Started seeing ghosts when I was only 8 years old. I saw that boy disappear.
This isn't real. Welcome to the Raker'z Dozen. Hey guys, welcome to this bonus episode of the Raker'z Dozen, a true paranormal podcast. Just wanted to give you a quick update. Some projects have come up and slightly disrupted my editing schedule for future episodes just briefly. But rather than simply not putting out a new episode, I decided to release my first compilation episode with stories from Docena Lane. Over an hour of stories from the street I grew up on. But stay tuned, we will return with new episodes shortly. And just as a reminder, if you have a story that you'd like to share, please email me at therakersdozen@gmail.com. Hope you guys enjoy this compilation. Now let's get into it. Okay, so here's another story that happened in my friend's house where I saw the boy in red. This story took place about a year later after that experience. Things kind of settled down, and although I still had some strange experiences, they were always small things. You know, like the usual things getting moved or noises or sounds in the house. Nothing notable or even worth mentioning. But on this day, that changed. It was 1991, and every moment I wasn't in school, I was at my buddy's house, even during the week. So I was always there. But on some weekends, we rode the bus to the Santa Fe Springs Mall, which, by the way, doesn't exist anymore. But just like the kids in the 90s, we'd head to the mall and hang out, play some Street Fighter 2 at the arcade, grab some food, and do what they now call people watching. Ah, to be young again. It was a Saturday morning and we planned to go to the mall. I got up early, walked up the street to my buddy's house, and I used to just knock on the door and walk in, and so I did. When I walked inside the house, it was quiet. Eerily quiet. I mean, there was always TVs on and music playing or kids running around. I mean, always. But today, the house was absolutely quiet, which I found strange. I said, "Hello?" "Hello?" But nobody responded. As I walked in, I could hear the shower running, so I decided to sit down in the living room and just wait for him to get ready, so we can head out later on. And of course, I helped myself to some chips and soda while waiting. All the blinds were closed, so the living room was really dark. They're normally open during the day, and then his family closes them at night. I guess no one opened them this morning. I started looking around for the remote so I can watch some TV. And from behind me, I heard footsteps running from the front door directly into the kitchen. I quickly whipped around, startled, expecting to see one of my buddy's nephews, but no one was there. Just like before, I felt my heartbeat quicken. I could feel it pounding in my chest. I slowly started walking up the steps into the dining area cautiously. I nervously said, "Is somebody here? Is somebody here?" Nobody responded. I took a few more steps getting closer to the kitchen, and now my heart is pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I slowly stepped into the kitchen, and nobody was there. Freaked out, I knocked on the bathroom door, still hearing the shower running. My buddy yelled, "What? I'm in the shower." And so I replied, "Hey, did you get out of the shower and walk to the kitchen right now?" And being my best friend, he responded with, "I'm in the effing shower. How the hell would I get out and walk to the kitchen? I'll be done in a few minutes. Just then, the thought occurred to me. Maybe his older sister is home and I just didn't realize it. So I walked down the hall and knocked on her door and waited. No response. And so I knocked again, and I finally decided to open the door slowly. Yep, and you guessed it, nobody was there. So I closed the door and decided to head back to the living room. By now, I'm just rationalizing that I probably just heard the house settling or some other ridiculous excuse. And so I walked down the stairs into the living room and sat down on the couch. I say, F it, I'm just gonna watch TV while I wait for my buddy. And just then, I hear the footsteps run from the kitchen right back to the front door. I jump up and run to the front door, searching for who the hell just ran in the house again. But there was no one. By now, I'm freaking the F out. Just as I was about to leave the house and just go home, my buddy comes out of the shower, dressed, and asks what's going on. Like I'm fumbling with my words, and I must have sounded like I was going crazy. I said, someone ran from the front door to the kitchen, and then just a few minutes later, it ran from the kitchen right back to the front door. He started laughing at me and making fun of me. He said, bro, let me put my shoes on and let's just get out of here and head to the mall. And so we did. But for the rest of the day, I couldn't let it go. The sound of the footsteps just bothered me. I'm pretty sure that it was a child's footsteps. Don't ask me how I know. They sounded lighter, not as heavy. And I asked myself, was it the boy in red? Was it another spirit? Honestly, I never found out. And I never heard them again. But I could still hear those footsteps. In my dreams. This is another story from my buddy's house on Docena Lane. By now, seeing or feeling things in his house are becoming more and more regular. Now let me start by saying I was always told to never play the Ouija board, and I'd like to caution you to do the same. Before I jump into the story, let me quickly share my first experience with the Ouija board when I was a child. Believe it or not, I was just a kid when my buddy and I used a Ouija board at school. Yes, at school. I was in the 3rd grade, I believe, and one of the other students asked us if we wanted to play the Ouija board. Of course, we said yes. So she let us know she'd bring it to school tomorrow. I'm not sure why we were so excited. Maybe it's because all the lore surrounding the Ouija board. We both loved paranormal stuff. So the next day, she brings it to school, and before we go into class, she opens up her backpack to show us. She brought the Ouija board. Our faces lit up, and the excitement began filling our little hearts. At recess, we decided to find a place where the teachers couldn't see what we were doing. We walked all the way to where the basketball courts were and sat on the grass. It was a beautiful sunny day in Southern California. The sky was clear, the trees were still, and the yard was filled with kids playing kickball and playing on the swings. We started playing the Ouija board, but nothing happened. I mean, the planchette never moved at all. And after a few minutes of trying, my buddy starts making fun of the board. I'm pretty sure he called it a few choice words and stood up. But before leaving, he kicked the board. And out of nowhere, a massive gust of wind flew by, kicking up leaves and grass, similar to what you'd see on an extremely windy day. Scared the hell out of us, and we took off running. And now here it is, about 4 years later. I'm 13 and in my buddy's house. I had always known his older sister played the Ouija board a lot. She was about 6 years older than us. For years, I've asked her to play the Ouija board in front of us, and she declined. She said, it's not a game. You have no business playing it. But for whatever reason this day, she said yes. Hell yeah. So she grabbed the board and a candle, and we walked into my buddy's room. I'm not really sure why we chose his room, but we did. My buddy closed the blinds so the room was a little darker. Not completely, since it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but dark enough to set the tone. His sister lit the candle, and when she pulled out her Ouija board, I was a little surprised. The board itself was covered in a black velvet cloth. And when she removed the cloth, I noticed a bunch of markings and symbols written on the board. Definitely not the standard issued board you'd find at the store. She definitely added them herself. And so I asked her, "What are those symbols on the board?" All she said was, "Spells." I never got an answer if those spells were dark in nature or protective spells. His sister just ignored me and didn't answer when I asked. What happened next, I wasn't prepared for. The moment she placed her hands on that planchette, it started zipping around the board in an infinity symbol. You know, the number 8 when it's laid on its side. It was moving so fast I could feel my eyes struggling to track it. My buddy and I both looked at each other, surprised. She began asking questions. You know, the typical ones. Are you there? Who am I speaking with? And then we heard a noise in the living room. Remembering her son was asleep there, I said, maybe the baby woke up. The Ouija board moved to the word no and stayed there for a brief moment, then resumed doing the infinity sign, almost waiting for the next question. She asked me to go check on her son. When I walked into the living room, the baby was still asleep. So I returned to the room and let her know he's still sleeping. She just nodded and continued asking the next question. Spirit, can you make the candle flame get bigger? I quickly looked at the lit candle and noticed the steady flame began to flicker. It had been constant since we started the session. I looked at my buddy and I know he was thinking the same thing that I am. What the F? And to my surprise, the flame begins to double in size, from like an inch to almost 2 inches. All the while it's dancing and flickering. Now I rationalize a flame flickering from maybe a draft or something in the room, but not it doubling in size. That's impossible. Just then we heard my buddy's parents come home. So a sister moved the planchette over goodbye written on the board and begins to put the board away. She blows out the candle and says, "We're done." Without another word, his sister gets up, grabs the board, and walks out of the room. We both sat there for a moment, and at the same time, we both say, "What the fuck just happened?" I'm not sure if this opened a door for the spirits to know who I am. But looking back, it sure feels like it was a turning point for me. The activity inside and outside his home started becoming a normal thing and has followed me my entire life. Doesn't matter where I live, there was always activity. Let me start by saying that I'm a pretty rational person, and I believe in the things that I could see and that I could touch. But I'm also the kind of person who uses logic to problem solve the unexplained things. And when logic can't explain something, then it's probably paranormal or supernatural. I guess you can call me a skeptic, but I'm still open to otherworldly explanations. And I wanted to share a story that my mom told me about the house we grew up in. Multiple generations grew up in my grandpa's home. And I have a lot of stories from this house and this street. But for me, a lot of it started in this house on Docena Lane. So let's just start at the beginning. This is a story that my mom shared with me when she was in her 20s, before I was born. My mom and dad lived in my grandpa's home in my hometown of Santa Fe Springs, California. It was a 2-bedroom home and a converted garage as a 3rd bedroom. This was my mom's childhood home as well. My grandpa had moved to Arizona because of all the pool construction work was drying up here. My grandpa saw a great opportunity to follow his career and move the family out to Arizona. But since my mom already had my oldest brother, she wasn't going to move with them. She wanted to stay here. She wanted to stay in California. And so she did. My grandparents let her stay in the house as long as she paid the rent with my father. I guess this would be relevant later on since all of my brothers, including me, would eventually grow up in this home. And ultimately there'd be 4 boys, with me being the youngest. Multiple generations growing up in my grandparents' home. So let me share this. I never took my mom for being a believer in the paranormal. It just wasn't something we really talked about until I shared my own stories in my 30s. And it was at a family gathering that my mom shared her story. Okay, enough about the backstory, so let's get to my mom's experience. Now, at the time of this paranormal experience, my mom was raising my 2 older brothers with my dad, and they were just toddlers. And she had a dog named Princess. She was sweet, loyal, and a gentle dog. The kind of dog who knows you're having a bad day and just wants to comfort you and be by your side. She was a mixed breed, and I don't know if they ever really knew what she was. Princess would be so excited every time they would come home from work, and she adored my parents. She was a fierce protector of my older brothers. She was small, but don't mess with her. If you've ever had a dog like this, you know exactly what I mean. Someone who loves you unconditionally. Now, this house had no gates closing off the backyard. You could literally walk around the entire house without a fence stopping you. Yeah, I know, it was strange, but it was always like that. So Princess was an indoor dog, which was rare back then. She was really good about not straying off the property, but she loved playing in the backyard and sometimes would run to the front yard to chase cars passing them. And on this day, Princess got out of the house, and unfortunately, she was hit by a car speeding down the street. My mom said she heard the screeching of the tire and came running out of the house to see what happened. And there she was, Princess, lying in the road. The driver jumped out and apologized over and over that he never saw her, that she just ran into the middle of the street. My mom yelled for my dad, and he came outside to see what the hell was going on. And by now, a couple of neighbors started coming outside to see what happened. My dad walked out of the house, and he was shocked to see Princess lying in the street. He walked up to the driver and told him it's not his fault. He said, "My dog used to wait for me by the curb sometimes, or even in the middle of the street when I would come home. She recognized the sound of my '68 Nova, the same car that you have. I don't know, maybe she thought it was me coming down the street. Damn dog." My dad turned to my mom and said, "I'll take care of it." And my mom started crying.
Oh my God.
My dad picked up Princess knowing she had already passed, and he took her to the backyard. My mom followed him with a heavy heart. He told my mom, "She's gone, and I'm gonna bury her in the backyard on the small hill." She just nodded. Back then, people didn't take their pets to the vet like they do now. It's expensive, and my parents were barely getting by, so a vet visit was out of the question. Honestly, I doubt it would have made a difference. Her injuries were fatal, and so my dad buried Princess in the backyard. Yeah, I know it sounds crazy, but that was common back then. There's even a dent in that hill where she was buried. I remembered it growing up. But a couple days later, after Princess was buried, in the middle of the night, my parents heard the sound of a dog collar. My mom woke my dad up saying she thinks there's something in the house. They both sat still for a moment, and then they heard it again. Tiny paws walking on the tiles and the jiggling of a dog collar. It sounded like it was walking around the house. My mom whispered, "I think you need to go see what it is. It sounds like a dog collar." My dad reluctantly got out of bed, unsure of what was going on. He said, "Stay here, I'll go see what's going on." He slowly walked into the kitchen, checking all the doors. Nothing. He made his way to the living room to check the front doors. Nothing. And as he walked back towards the bedroom, he noticed movement in the hallway. His heart started pounding in his chest. My dad slowly walked into the hallway, and there she was, Princess. Shocked, my dad struggled to find the words until he finally said nervously, "Princess, what are you doing here?" No, you can't stay here. We loved you so much, but you can't stay here. You have to leave now, and please don't come back. Find your way to the other side." Princess tilted her head slightly while staring at my dad, almost acknowledging what my dad was telling her. She whimpered one last time for a few moments, and then she turned and slowly jogged towards the back door near the kitchen and disappeared. My dad stood there for a moment trying to wrap his head around what just happened, and then he walked back into the bedroom. My mom asked, "What happened?" My dad struggled putting his own thoughts together, but he finally said, "It was Princess." "What?" my mom said. "We buried Princess in the backyard. How could she be here?" My dad responded, "I think she came to say goodbye." My mom was shocked and her heart broken, but she wished she could have said goodbye. She knew she was in a better place and that eased her pain. I wish I could say my dad consoled my mom, but he didn't. They just went back to bed and tried to forget what happened. A few years later, my third older brother would be born, and then eventually me. And 5 years after I was born, my dad left. My mom filed for divorce, but we stayed in this home. And by the time I was 8 years old, it was my turn to start experiencing a lifetime of paranormal activity. It's 1992 and it's just another typical weekend hanging out at my buddy's house. We're playing The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past on Super Nintendo. All we ever did was game at this age, and we were both 13 at the time. I spent almost every day at my best friend's house. We had chips, snacks, soda, and all the goodies we never had in my own home growing up. Those were some of the best years of my life as a kid. I've already been experiencing strange things in his house the last 2 years. I don't want to say that I've gotten used to it, but I almost learned to ignore the feeling that someone was watching me. Or sometimes there was just strange energy in the house. I chalked it up to this house is weird as fuck. My buddy's house had a den by the front door. When you first walk in, it was to the left. This had always been a hangout and gaming room for all of us. And on this afternoon, when I dropped into my friend's house, I walked into the den. He told me he was gonna make a sandwich or something and left the den. Now, the back of the couch was facing the front door entrance, and just behind my head was the entrance to the dining room. Within a minute or so of my buddy leaving the room, somebody walked in from the dining room area and stood right behind the back of my head. I could see them out of the corner of my left eye, so thinking it was his older sister, I just kept watching TV. She didn't speak or even move for a few minutes. I don't remember what show I was watching, but because it was funny, it would make sense for her to stand there and watch with me. And because his older sister had done this in the past, I just assumed it was her. Within a few minutes, things started feeling odd. Not a single sound while standing there. And also, I never heard her footsteps when she walked in. Never heard a single laugh when the funny parts happened. I just started wondering, what is she doing? So I looked back, and she was gone. My heart started racing knowing something was off. This has become standard now, especially when I experience something strange. So I decided to get up and walk to his sister's room and ask her, did she want something? Like, why was she just standing there for at least 5 minutes? I knocked on her door, and she opened it. I immediately noticed her clothes were different. She was wearing a black t-shirt with shorts, when the other person was wearing all white. I asked her, "Did you change your clothes?" And she responded, "No, why?" Looking confused, she said something I'll never forget. She said, "You saw her." I said, "Saw who?" "The lady in white," she responded. I slowly nodded my head yes. My buddy's sister told me that she's seen her too. Very often. Very often. Very often. Sometimes I wonder who the lady in white was. Maybe a relative of my buddy. I don't know. But what I do remember is the woman in white never felt threatening to me. Definitely didn't pick up on any negative energy like some of the other experiences in the house. It genuinely felt like a member of the family just wanting to watch TV with me. And I'm okay with that. But I never saw the woman in white. Again. I debated for a long time whether to share this story. I think it's because it's the only experience where I wasn't sure if I was awake or sleeping. All the paranormal experiences that I've had in my life, I'm awake, and I'm just going about my day when things happen. But this one was different. The story involves astral projection. Astral projection refers to an out-of-body experience during which the astral body leaves the physical body and travels to the astral plane. In 1993, when I was about 13 or 14 years old, I spent the weekend at my buddy's house. The same house as the boy in red, the lady in white, the lady in black in prior episodes. By now, experiencing paranormal things in my friend's house is normal for me. And this was just another normal Friday night, playing video games, eating snacks, talking smack, watching horror films, the same stuff we always did. At about 2 a.m., we finally went to bed. Because I practically lived at my buddy's house, I actually had my own bed. Yeah, my own bed. So anyways, we knocked out and I remember waking up around 3:15 a.m. I didn't have to use the restroom. I just woke up as if something woke me up. I remember rolling over and looking at the alarm clock that he had on the dresser. It was one of those old digital alarm clocks in the 90s. The one that had loud-ass, super annoying buzzing when it went off. I felt like something was calling me to the living room. The room was dark, but his bedroom door was open and I could see a faint orange light casting from the kitchen. I assumed it was from the kitchen because at night they left the light above the oven on, and it would cast this soft orange glow towards the dining room area and my buddy's room. And like I said, I spent so much time here, I knew all the little nuances of the house. And I just couldn't resist it that something was telling me, go investigate the kitchen. I can't explain it. You know when you hear a noise and your curiosity forces you to search? Well, it felt just like that. And as I stood up out of bed, I noticed my buddy was still asleep. I slowly got up, trying not to wake him up, and I walked into the dining area which faced the kitchen. Sure enough, that little light above the oven was on. And just then I realized how quiet the house was. My spidey sense started going off. Something was wrong. To be honest, I was expecting to see a spirit or something worse. Over the years, I began recognizing my body responding to when something is wrong. You can call it intuition or whatever, but my heart began pounding hard and my adrenaline would kick in, and I'd start to feel anxiety that wasn't mine. What I mean is there's a difference between being scared and feeling anxiety. That's not what this was. I wasn't scared at all. I was actually calm but alert and ready to fight, not flight. This has become a normal part of my life now. So when I say I feel anxiety and it's not mine, there was no reason for me to feel anxiety because I wasn't scared. But it was still there. I understood this more as I got older, the difference between internal self-anxiety and anxiety which feels like it's being pushed on me by the environment. Anyways, I look around the kitchen, the dining area, and even the living room. And then I started to notice that the color everywhere looked slightly less saturated. Now, I'm a photographer, so it looked like the colors were duller, like they were slightly muted or less colorful. Even the light in the kitchen didn't look as orange as normal. I guess if you've ever watched a movie and there's certain scenes where the color just looks dull, that's kind of what it felt like. I decided I'm just gonna go back to bed and started walking to my buddy's room. As I entered the room, I saw something that scared me so bad. I saw myself sleeping on my bed. It was me lying there. My heart started pounding so hard that I thought it was gonna explode. I start to feel like I'm gonna hyperventilate and begin feeling like I can't breathe. I had to tell myself, remain calm. This is just a dream, right? There was something deep down inside my soul telling me this is real. And I managed to somehow astral project out of my body. I stood there for what felt like an hour. But when I glanced over to the alarm clock, it had only been a few minutes that passed. It felt like time was extremely slow during this experience. I made the choice I needed to somehow get back into my body, but I wasn't sure how. I've seen a bunch of ghost movies and it was pretty clear to me I needed to go lay back down into my body. And if it worked in the movies, I'm sure it would work now, right? I honestly said, fuck it, and walked towards my body on the bed. I got chills just looking at myself. I looked so peaceful. Something deep down told me I needed to re-enter my body or I'd be stuck on this plane. I looked at the clock, 3:46 a.m. So with slight hesitation, I laid down on the bed and on top of my physical body and closed my eyes. What I felt next was the most painful experience I've ever felt. I opened my eyes, my body hurt so bad. It felt like I was electrocuted or something. I couldn't breathe, but felt like I was jolted awake. And then I looked at the clock, 3:46 a.m. I made it back. I'm not sure how I was able to astral project that night. All I know is I never wanted to experience that again. And when I saw the movie Insidious for the first time, my jaw dropped. I remember thinking, was I ever in danger? While I was in the astral plane. I now truly believe I could have been in danger. You know, the pain I felt re-entering my body gave me nightmares for a few weeks. And I've only ever experienced that level of pain one other time in my life. And that was after having surgery on my right leg. I'll give you the cliff notes. I had some type of infection from a bug bite, went to urgent care, could barely walk, and the doctor made an incision in my leg to let it drain. And drain it did, right into the back of my leg, causing a massive infection. I almost lost my leg because of that, doctor. 2 days after my urgent care visit, I went to see my primary doctor because I was in agonizing pain. And because of the action of my primary, I was rushed into surgery the next day. But after the surgery, I was left with an open wound the size of a golf ball, stuffed with gauze. And after a few days of surgery, I had to pull all of that gauze out by myself. It took me 3 hours to pull it out, 1 inch at a time. And there was about 6 feet worth of gauze stuffed in my leg. The pain was so unbearable that I nearly passed out twice. That's the type of pain I felt re-entering my body. Honestly, I'm not even sure if that's normal or not. But I knew after that experience, I made a conscious choice to protect myself now and try not to open any doors. And although that wasn't completely successful, I now started to step back from curiously trying to seek out the paranormal. I never astral projected again. Here's another story that took place a few months after I saw the lady in white. While watching TV with my buddy's family in their living room, something strange happened. We were watching Unsolved Mysteries or something like that, waiting to stay up for Saturday Night Live. Back then, we used to get the replay at 11:30 p.m. in California. We didn't have streaming and all that stuff back then. And I remember this distinctly because we got to stay up late to watch it. So while watching TV in the living room, I had this really strange feeling. And so the back of his couches faced the dining room area, so we really couldn't see other parts of the house unless you looked behind you. I had this growing feeling that somebody was in the dining area staring at us. Now, this has happened in the past when other family members would stop there to see what we're watching on TV. And I decided to turn around, and I saw someone walking from the dining room area to my buddy's room located on the right side of the house. But what I saw confused me. I only got a glimpse of the lower part of a black, long laced dress with what appeared to be a train? You know, like the ones on a wedding dress? I only saw a glimpse of this dress because the living room wall prevented me from seeing her completely. Instantly, my brain thought, who the F is wearing a black lace dress and walking into my buddy's bedroom? So I jumped up off the couch to investigate. I do want to note that all the sound of the TV and my friend's family talking dulled down. Like I couldn't hear the noise anymore. Almost like I was solely focused on finding that person and I just didn't hear anything, but my heart beating really hard. So I cautiously walked into my buddy's room and looked around. No one. I stood there for a few moments and thought to myself, they're getting bolder now. So I walked back to the living room and sat down. The moment I sat down, the TV and all the noise of the house resumed. I told my buddy, I saw a woman in black walk into your room. He said, when? Right now? I said, yeah, I got up when I saw her walking towards your bedroom. And I'll never forget what he said next. He said, you never got up. You were sitting here the entire time. I stared at him for a moment, and I thought to myself, what the F just happened? Just happened. Just happened. What do you guys think happened? Did this spirit somehow affect my friend from seeing me get up and then follow the lady in black? This one still leaves me with so many questions. Like, why did I feel like time slowed down? Why the hell was she wearing some black dress with a train? You know what I realized for those of you that are Harry Potter fans? Her dress reminded me of Bellatrix Lestrange. Just Google it, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Let me ask you guys, have you ever seen an apparition? I'm always curious about what other people's experiences were like seeing a ghost for the first time. Well, today you're gonna hear my first experience seeing a physical presence in my buddy's house. Just another story from Docena Lane where I grew up. So get comfortable, relax, and get ready for a story that changed my life. And just as a reminder, if you have a paranormal story that you'd like to share, please email me at Raker'z Dozen@gmail.com. Now let's get into it. This is another story about what I experienced at my buddy's home. Like I mentioned in a previous episode, he lived up the street from me. We've known each other since the second grade, I believe. And we are still friends almost 38 years later. But I did want to mention his house began feeling a little darker and darker as the years passed by. More and more incidents started happening to me. It's almost like the house recognized that I felt something was off inside of it. And the spirits and other darker entities began showing themselves more and more as the years rolled by. It started with maybe once or twice a year I would experience something. And within 7 years, it was happening monthly and even weekly sometimes. But I wanted to share the first time I physically saw a spirit in his home. So let me share, I was absolutely a skeptic. And in many ways, I still am. But I do feel this experience was the one that opened doors and emboldened other spirits in that home to show themselves to me. Can't tell you why or how I know this, only that the frequency of experiences seemed to escalate after seeing the boy in red. So here we go. It was a typical Friday night of a 12-year-old in the 90s. Chips, snacks, video games, music, watching horror films, and stealing some beers from my friend's dad as he left for work. Those were the days. No responsibility. On this night, we were up late watching some horror films. I don't remember which one. More than likely, it was like the original Amityville or something like that. On a side note, we used to be able to get rated R horror flicks at the local Video Galaxy down the street in Santa Fe Springs. The owner's son always hooked us up. I can say that now because we all know what happened to the video stores. Damn you, Netflix. It was about 11:30 p.m. and we were hanging out in the living room. My friend's mom already went to bed and everyone else in the house was asleep. My buddy asked me if I could check the calendar next to the kitchen and see if he had a dental visit the next morning. I had to take a leak anyway, so I just got up, talked some crap as young men do, and walked up the 2 steps leading towards the dining area, right next to the kitchen. So I made it to the kitchen, looked at the calendar, and then noticed that he didn't have an appointment scheduled the next morning. But before I had a chance to yell out that he didn't have an appointment, I noticed some movement in my peripheral vision to the right of me. You know that feeling when you can see something even though you're not looking directly at it? And so I whipped my head to the right quickly, and for a brief second, I saw a young boy standing there in my buddy's bedroom door. He looked like he was about 7 or 8 years old, wearing a bright red shirt and blue jeans. And when I blinked, he was gone. I felt my heart start beating really fast. Something I've learned to recognize as my body telling me something's wrong or off. Still confused, I began walking towards my friend's bedroom looking for the child. My friend yelled out, "Do I have an appointment tomorrow or what?" And it kind of snapped me out of the trance that I was in. Still looking around for the boy in red, I walked downstairs back into the living room. He asked me again if he had an appointment, and I responded, "No." I could feel that moment playing over and over in my head, just trying to rationalize what the hell did I just see. I finally told my buddy, "I just saw a little boy wearing a red shirt near your room." He started laughing at me, telling me I'm buzzed and I don't know what I'm talking about. And even I thought maybe those 2 beers I drank had me seeing things, but wait, I know what I saw. It was getting late, so we just decided to go to bed for the night. He went to his room and I slept on the couch in the living room. It was about 3 a.m. when I woke up. I needed to use the restroom really bad. But I felt like someone was watching me. You know that feeling, something just isn't right? When I glanced towards my buddy's room, and I saw him. The same boy in red was leaning on the banister, staring at me. Almost like a tired child doing homework at a table and falling asleep laying on their hands. I sat up quickly, and he was gone. Once again, my heart was racing. I got up and looked for the little boy, but he was gone. Eventually, I sat back down on the couch for the first time, feeling scared. What's happening to me? Am I losing my mind? Seeing the same boy twice in the same night wasn't some trick of light, or the result of 2 beers when I saw him 3 to 4 hours apart. I felt like the house was alive or something, that's trying to tell me something. The following morning, I told my friend about what happened. And you guessed it, he just laughed. He told me I'm just seeing things that aren't real. And after talking with his sister later on, I found out that she experienced so many things in that house. And over the next 7 years, I continued experiencing strange things in that home. But I never saw that little boy again. Seeing the boy in red rattled me. Seeing an apparition for the first time is scary enough, but for it to be a little boy. I remember asking his family if a little boy ever died there, but they didn't really know. And back then in the 90s, the internet was still relatively new, so there wasn't a quick way to just do a Google search. And I eventually just let it go. This is another story from the same house as the princess episode, except this time something strange actually happened to me. And it was the first time I remember something paranormal had me questioning if ghosts were real. As I mentioned before, my mom grew up in this house, and so did we. So this was just the beginning of a life filled with unexplainable things. I was about 7 or 8 years old when my Uncle Mario passed away. He actually lived next door to us with my aunt, their son, and 2 grandkids. But for privacy reasons, I'm not going to mention their names. My dad was already gone, so it was just my mom raising 4 kids alone. 4 kids. I don't have many memories of my uncle. I honestly can't even remember what he looked like. I just remember my mom spent time next door with them often. She used to cut my aunt's hair, and they were pretty close. My aunt really looked after my mom after my dad left us when I was about 5 years old. My aunt was my grandpa's sister, so she's known my mom her entire life. At the time, I really didn't understand what death was. I mean, I was just a kid and hadn't learned that people actually die. I know it sounds strange, but it's one of those things that if you have kids, like I do now, it's not a topic that you bring up until you have to. It wasn't until later that we read Charlotte's Web at school that I realized we all die at some point. And I remember coming home after finished reading it at school and telling my mom that I didn't want to die. I grew up in the 80s, so it was a different time. We literally watched cartoons Saturday morning and Saved by the Bell. Very innocent existence. Can you imagine a world without the internet or instant access to any movie you want on a streaming platform? It's crazy, I know, but I'm kind of getting off track here. Well, one day I knew something was wrong. I could just tell the energy felt weird when we went next door to visit my aunt. My mom seemed really sad and my aunt was crying a lot. But honestly, I just played with my little cousins, just business as usual. I don't think my mom even really told us that my uncle had passed away. But looking back now, we must have visited after the funeral. I don't remember actually attending the funeral, but maybe we did. After what seemed like hours, I grew bored and hungry. Whatever they were serving, I didn't want to eat it. Not gonna lie, I was a picky eater back then. So I just asked my mom if I can go home and make something to eat, like a bowl of cereal or something. And reluctantly, she agreed, so off I went and walked home, which was just next door. I chose to walk up the stairs to the side of our house. It was just quicker than walking all the way around the house to the front door. And that side door led straight into the kitchen, so it made sense to me. The moment I opened the door, something felt strange. For the first time in my entire life, no one was in the house. My older brothers were out with their friends, while my other brother stayed with my mom at my aunt's house. It was absolutely quiet, and so quiet I could hear my footsteps and the floors creaking as I walked into the kitchen. So I started feeling uneasy, but I was hungry and really wanted some cereal. I mean, it was Captain Crunch after all. So I opened the upper cabinet where we kept the bowls. My mom used to have some old ceramic bowls that we used for menudo. You know, those ones that typically have that brown stripe that runs around the inner part of the bowl? Well, there was a stack of 5 of them in there. And I loved using those bowls because you could fit a lot of cereal in them. But just as I was about to grab a bowl, I heard something in the living room. It sounded as if someone coughed and cleared their throat. It startled me, but I figured it was one of my brothers who came home early or something. So I started walking towards the living room, calling out for them. Somebody here? Hello? I walked into the living room and no one was there. But I figured maybe they walked into one of the other rooms. So I started checking each room, and every few seconds I would say, hello? Stop messing with me, guys. I checked every room, and no one was there. The silence was making me feel uneasy, and I could hear my heart beating in my ears. I eventually figured it was probably someone outside. I heard my stomach growl, and I remembered I was still hungry, so I headed back into the kitchen. With the cabinet still open, I reached for the bowl again and I heard the cough again. This time, I know it was coming from the living room, and I could see from where I was standing that there was no one there. Then I heard the crash, and I spun around to find a bowl on the counter just below the cabinet. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it was gonna explode. And then I noticed it. The bowl was cracked right down the middle, and there was two symmetrical pieces, maybe an inch apart from each other, still standing upright. Confused, I stared at them. How could the bowls have fallen when the bowls were stacked on top of each other in the cabinet? And if it was a ceramic bowl that fell from the cabinet above the kitchen counter, it should have shattered everywhere. And yet, this bowl was now split in half right down the middle. No other broken pieces anywhere. My little brain was trying hard to understand how the two halves are still standing upright. Even then, my logic told me those pieces should have fallen over, one falling to the left and one falling to the right. I figured I better just throw them away. I didn't want my mom to get upset with me and give me a lecture that I knew she would. So I tossed the two halves of the bowl away and just got another bowl. Even though I'm scared and confused, I'm still hungry. I made my cereal, went into the living room, and turned the TV on. I didn't think twice about how weird it was until a few years later. A few years later, my mom mentioned that Uncle Mario used to cough and clear his throat often, and I just happened to overhear it. My heart started pounding, and I walked over to them and asked, "Uncle Mario used to cough and clear his throat?" A little confused, my mom responds, "Yes, he had a very distinct cough and a way of clearing his throat." My body instantly got chills. She asked me, "Sweetie, are you okay?" I just nodded my head. It was at that moment I realized my Uncle Mario must have been the one that came to visit me in the house that day, and that some type of door was open, or my sensitivity to the paranormal started then. I never told my mom that story. 37 years later, I'm still experiencing things. Let me start off by saying at this point in my life, I've already been experiencing some paranormal activity, especially in the home I grew up in. And I was about 12 years old when this took place. I knew my friend's house was haunted, and maybe I'll share those stories down the road. But just to give you some context to why that's relevant, is something followed me home from his house one night. And it was probably one of the scariest nights of my life. Growing up, my buddy lived about 8 houses away up the block from me. He used to joke around that his family said that his house was haunted, and I laughed. At that point in life, we were both fascinated with paranormal experiences and watched shows like Sightings. The first show that I remember that focused on just paranormal stuff. Even though I had previously experienced things in my mom's house, I hadn't experienced anything in my friend's house. And although when I really think about it, I felt a strange presence there more and more often, especially late at night when everybody would go to bed and we were up watching movies or gaming. But as a kid, you really don't pay much attention to stuff like this, or maybe I just chose not to. His house was the hangout house since he had video games, snacks, soda, and we were able to game all night long. His parents were super cool like that. To be young again in the 90s, it was great. Spent every day after school and almost every weekend there. They became my second family. Eventually the house took a darker tone for some reason. Started feeling a little more and more uncomfortable. The only way that I know how to explain this is that I would feel anxiety, and I'd feel like someone was constantly watching me. I'd hear noises or sounds as if someone was walking around the house when I knew everyone was asleep. Or sometimes when I stayed over, I'd get up to use the restroom at like 3 a.m. and I'd hear cabinets cracking or just something weird like that. I did know my buddy's older sister played the Ouija board a lot. She was into it, and I remember she wrote spells on the boards and some crazy stuff like that. There were symbols all over her board. And every once in a while we would get her to let us play with her, but I never took it seriously, or maybe I should have. One night we begged my friend's sister to play the Ouija board with us. She didn't want to, and she told us to get out of her room. We begged more, and she finally, out of annoyance, she said fine, but only for a little while. As she was getting her board, I remember feeling excited, like I was gonna get a Christmas present or something. I know it sounds strange, but if you ever felt excited doing something you're not supposed to do, it was kind of like that. And since we were boys, we always enjoyed the sense of danger or getting into trouble. She then started playing the board. Now let me tell you, at this point in my life, I've tried the Ouija board with a cousin before, so I kinda knew what to expect, or at least I thought I did. But the moment she put her hands on that board, it moved at such a high speed, going in a figure 8, or what we knew as an infinity symbol. It startled me. She began asking questions, and I honestly don't remember what she asked, but I started feeling extremely uncomfortable. I noticed the candles she lit began flickering, the energy in the room began feeling dark, and the room just felt heavy. It's almost like in the movies where sound drowns out and the actor is looking around to see if anyone else is noticing something strange is happening. That was happening to me. I said I needed to use the restroom, and I just walked out of the room. My heart was pounding. I stood in that bathroom for a few minutes just trying to shake off whatever weirdness I felt. When I walked back into the room, she was putting the Ouija board away and told us to get out of her room now. So we did. The rest of the night I just felt off, as if something was looming around me. I ended up going home later that night. I just didn't want to be in that house anymore. I came home around maybe 8. Tomorrow I had school, so I just went to bed. The entire night I had nightmares. I wish I could remember exactly what they were, but this has been over 30 years. But what I do remember is in my dreams, something was chasing me and trying to terrorize me. I couldn't see whatever it was, I just felt its presence. Around 6:30 in the morning, I woke up. I knew it was that time because I could hear my mom making coffee, getting ready for work. She did this every morning during the week. And then I realized I couldn't move. Something was on top of me. I couldn't breathe. It looked like a cloud of smoke was hovering directly over me, and I felt like it was sucking the breath out of me. Maybe my life force. I don't know. But I was paralyzed and began panicking, but my eyes were wide open, and I attempted to call my mom, knowing she was in the kitchen, but nothing would come out. I felt like I was suffocating and about to pass out. I had to tell myself, stay calm and focus. And after multiple attempts, I finally whispered, "Mom." And whatever it was, let go of me, and I saw the mist fly out the bedroom window. I sat up quickly, trying to catch my breath. I know whatever we played with that previous night followed me home, followed me home, followed me home. I still think about this story. It's one of the first times in my life that I felt true terror because of something paranormal. It's one thing to see and hear paranormal activity. It's another thing to feel attacked by something. I started realizing that this isn't a game, and there are things in this world that we don't understand and may want to hurt us. The good thing is I never experienced anything like this again. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Raker'z Dozen. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and give us a 5-star review and help the show grow. Follow us on social media for updates on when new episodes will resume. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss the next few episodes. And if you enjoyed this compilation, leave me a comment so I know whether to do more in the future. Thanks for listening to this episode. And if you have a story that you'd like to share, please email me at therakersdozen@gmail.com. Thanks for listening to the Raker'z Dozen, a true paranormal story podcast.